Hi there, this is Brent Uris. Welcome back to my living room. I have a question for you today, which is, what conditions are you placing on your wellness? What is wellness? For me, I have personally made it my highest priority to be as well as I can possibly be. And so by that, I'm referring to the very simple state of just being in a place where you're okay, and everything's okay, and nothing's wrong, and there are no complaints, and we are just completely and totally at center, totally on point, without any particular hankering or any particular type of desire. And by desire, I mean like a kind of to fulfill some sort of a craving, as opposed to a desire to eat when the body gets hungry or to breathe when the body needs another breath. To be well, to be totally well, is to be poised, to be still, to be content, and to be without any negativity of any kind, to be without any kind of regrets or shame or complaint, that word comes again, or any kind of should, any sort of should that is imposed on life, as in this should happen in the future, this should be happening right now, or this should have happened in the past at some point in the history. So to be in a state of wellness, I hope I did a good job of selling it to you. I think it's something that you and I are constantly honing in on. It's something that we always have on the radar, and it's always something that ultimately our compass, our deepest sense of a compass, of a true north, is pointing towards wellness, being more well. And we have our ideas of what's required in order to be well, and then we go for that. And so the trick that we fall into, a lot of us, if you were to survey, say 100 people in your local town, region, or city, if you were to survey 100 people, and if you ask them, are you well? Are you generally well? You might get a mixed response. In fact, I do ask this to a lot of people, and the responses are mixed. Some people report that they're not well. And actually, most people report that they are well, but they're not telling the truth, in the sense that they just look like they're having a bad day. They look dismayed. They look like they have a lot of problems, a lot of weight on their shoulders, a lot of stress, a lot of things going wrong, a lot of aspirations, long-standing aspirations that haven't been made yet, and the intensity of the desire for that aspiration turns up over time. All of these reasons we have for not being well, are they really legitimate reasons? Are they good reasons? In other words, how well are we able to be right now? And so the subject of this video is reclaiming that wellness. And the central thesis of this video is that we've made up our mind about the past, and we've made up our mind about the future. That there are things that have happened in the past that are the reason why we cannot be well now. Or there are things that may happen in the future that once they happen, then we'll be well. And so I want to approach the past, and then I'm going to approach the future individually. But first, I'm going to take a sip of tea. It's yerba mate, in case you're curious. So if something happened in the past that we claim to be the reason why that we're not well now and that we can't be completely and totally well right now, we're in a state of, essentially a state of denial or a state of unforgiveness or a sense of just not making peace with that event that happened back then. And all of us have an experience of having been hurt at some point. Some of us, these are very extreme examples, and for others, these are not extreme. They're kind of relatively minor examples. But we all know what it's like to be hurt. And what happens in a moment, especially if it all kind of, happens in one particular moment or event or instant, is that it will happen and it will bring up feelings in us that are very strong. They'll bring up feelings of sadness or fear, shock, dismay, shame, guilt, whatever it is. It'll come up. And if it comes up all at once, for a lot of us, it can be so intense and so much all at once that we just can't deal with it. And we make a certain sort of unconscious decision not to deal with it. And so what we do is we put up a sort of a wall and we put it and we just kind of like separate ourselves from it. And then we'll say something like, it shouldn't have happened. So what's happening energetically is the feeling comes up, it's too much, we turn away from it, we hold it in, we even clench our muscles, clench our body, and then we come up with a sort of a mental thing that allows us to hold it at bay. And that mental thing is that sense of this shouldn't have happened. So if you can think about something that you're totally in a lack of forgiveness about. For my own self, I have an example, which was my wife and I. We arrived in Bali, Indonesia, for a week. We were just on a vacation, and we wanted to check it out. And we arrived in the airport, and we were tired because it was a big trip. And we got our bags, and then pretty much like as soon as we left the doorway of the airport, there was this guy who was just kind of like standing there. And he was like, do you need a taxi? And we were, we should have known better. And then there's the should, so you can see this is happening in real time right now. But we accepted his invitation for a taxi cab ride because that's what we needed to get to our hotel. And he takes us over to his car, puts our bags in, we sit down, and it's air conditioned. And the weather in Bali is typically very hot. It was very hot that day. And we sat down, and it was air conditioning. It was so nice, and we were so tired, and the seats were really comfortable. And he's like, so just so you know, it's going to be blah, 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 Indonesian something. I forget the currency, and I forget what it was, what the amount of the currency was. And so my wife and I, we looked at each other, we're like, okay. And we go, and then I pull out my phone, and I do a calculation. I realize it was $80 for this, this 10-minute cab ride. So halfway through, and I'm like, holy shit, this is $80. And so, I realized that, we're just being handled right now. And it's kind of a quiet cab ride. And the driver, he's like, kind of making chit chat, because I think, even energetically, he knew what was going on. He realized that he's scoring huge right now. And so, I was pissed off. And for the rest of the afternoon, we're like, shouldn't have. I can't believe, if only I had, and I really should have picked up the signal at this point. And you were just replaying it again and again and again. And then And that was it for 4 years. For 4 years, still salty about this cab driver. Not that it's like I wake up every morning, I'm like, yo, screw that guy. I go to bed, screw that guy. But what I notice, and I really hope I'm really clear with this, is that when I was in a state, as I was in a state of unforgiveness towards this cab driver, even though I would only recall it once in a blue moon, if I ever had like a relevant story, or if the memory just suddenly came up and I'd like kind of be bitter about it, it would come from the background into the foreground. In other words, it's like a sound. Like if you've ever been in a situation where there's like really loud machine noise and it sucks, but then you get used to it, but then you kind of like wake back up to it. You're like, oh yeah, oh man, this sucks. Or if it suddenly stops and you're like, oh, it's so much better, even though we weren't paying attention to it. It's exactly like that. To be in a state of unforgiveness, just because I wasn't thinking about it doesn't mean that it wasn't there, occupying a certain bit of my attention, like the background attention, a little bit of my processing power. If this were a Windows computer and you were to open up Task Manager and see like, the programs that are using your processing power. So it's like that. So as long as I was in a state of unforgiveness about this, looking back on it now, I know that I was just a little bit tense in every cab ride ever since then, even coming back to home. And so that is the price that you pay when you're in a state of unforgiveness about something that happened in the past. And so in my mind, like if you were to ask me, a little while ago, I would have said, well, maybe if I could talk with this guy and really kind of, I don't know, try to get an apology from him or something, then I would be okay. And so what that is that is the ego. It's the ego that knows that it feeds off of pain and it weaves a story like it needs retribution in order to put this thing to a close. The ego is the sense of face. It's the sense of winning and losing. It's the sense of domination and submission. So, so my ego hung on to that. I'm 99% over that cab driver. And there's like 1% of me that still hangs on. So again, really, this is happening in real time. So the thing about forgiveness is that when it comes to when my ego is slighted, just like your ego might have been slighted in the past, when something, you were just deceived or tricked or something was taken from you or you were hurt or whatever it is, we have an essential decision that we can make. And the decision is, what is my highest priority? Is it being right / winning? Or is it wellness? And this is a decision that comes to us again and again and again and again and again. Because as long as your priority or your sense of value is a little bit higher towards the sense of I need to be right, or I need to emerge victorious, or I need to get back, or retribution, then that's something that you can have. You have that, but your sense of wellness is now conditional. And that's what I meant by the original question. What conditions do you place on your wellness? Because what you're affirming to your own life is that you will only be well when the condition is met. And the thing is that we convince ourselves, never completely, but we can really, really, really hypnotize ourselves into this belief that other people are responsible for our wellness, or that only when the sense of retribution or making good, or when I come back on top, will my sense of wellness be there? As if other people give us or take away our wellness from us. But wellness, and what I'm talking about is the deepest sense. I'm not even talking about having a cold or whatever. I'm talking about that sense of just being totally in sync and in allowance with everything that is right now. That sense of wellness, that sense of yes, just yes to everything, is only available inside as a decision that you make. It is literally something that is either allowed or withheld from your own self. All the switches and all the buttons for your own wellness are located within you right now, right here. So it's only a matter of waking up out of the conditions that we place on it. You see? So you choose, do I want to be right or do I want to be well? And then if you are willing, it takes a little bit of an extra something from you. But if you are willing to bring that wellness into a higher priority, so that, wellness for yourself and for everybody, doesn't matter, just wellness as a general thing, is a higher thing, then the next logical thing that happens from there is forgiveness. It's just, you just realize that you realize that you're holding a grudge, and that the grudge serves nobody, serves nothing beneficial comes from it. And so then you just see it very, very plainly, and then it's just released. If there are lessons to be extracted from it, then extract them and apply them. Maybe, don't do what you were doing when you were hurt that time. Don't speak to that person. Maybe you don't want to hang out with them anymore, whatever that is. But right now, we're just talking about wellness right now. That's the subject. Very, very immediate. So that's the past. The future, very, very similar. It's interesting. The more you go into enlightenment, into awakening, into spirituality, there's a really, really interesting quality about time that applies outside of this moment. So just anywhere in the past or anywhere in the future, that as long as it's not this moment, they're almost interchangeable. They're very, very similar in a lot of respects. You could lump it all into a category of like now and all that's not now. So for the future, instead of, forgiveness, it's a sense of expectation, desire, anticipation. And this has been a really active theme for me. Something that I've just been like really, really doing a lot of releasing with. So this is a really exciting thing. Excuse me. As long as you have some future, then your present moment, anything that is unsavory about it is justified. If you have expectations to become successful or more successful, rich or more rich, famous or more famous, to have more, to be more, to have more experiences, to travel, to have more friends, to be more polished as a person, to learn more languages, whatever it is that you expect to get into the future, that will make that when you arrive in the future, your present moment will be justified, so that you are willing to tolerate what's happening in your now, because the future, the preferred future may arrive and that will be good. Then you are again placing conditions on your wellness, because what you're saying is, I'm not okay, but maybe I will be okay, and that's what I have. I have time. I have future, and so this applies to children and teens where they find themselves in a situation where they have essentially no past and just tons of future. I myself, I'm 30, and I find that I'm still, in terms of the whole lifespan, assuming I live all the way to 80, 90, or 100, still in the first half, but approaching the middle. And so now I'm starting to have as much history as future, and that's a really big thing. That's like a really interesting feeling. Kind of a panicky feeling. I can see why a lot of people have really mixed feelings about aging. It's weird. What happens though if you had no future? What if your future were taken away? You can imagine, like this would mean something like, say a prison sentence or a terminal illness or, heaven forbid, I hope you live a long, long, healthy life forever. But what if, just imagine for a moment that your sense of future were just gone and all you had was just everything that you have right now. So that everything about the future that you use to justify this moment is gone and you're just left with all of that. How does that feel? It's really becoming apparent to me that even a sense of having ambitions, goals, expectations, desires, hopes, wishes, dreams, that in a way they're healthy because they're sort of a product of a very, very natural human tendency to imagine something new and to gravitate towards that, to expand to the next level and so forth. But there's also this really detrimental aspect of it, that as long as we have hopes, wishes, and dreams, that we never really come totally online. We never come into the fullness of life because we're essentially affirming to ourselves and to the universe that life doesn't really begin until the conditions are met. In other words, wellness doesn't really totally blossom until I say so, until my expectations are met, until my ambitions are met, until I accomplish what I need to accomplish. And so the logical idea that comes from this is, well, I guess it's probably healthier to drop our expectations and our desires. But for a lot of us, some of us really cherish and hold the past. Some of us really cherish and hold the future. It's the same. It's exactly the same. But if we're to choose between our sense of ambition, goals, and our sense of wellness, what's the higher priority? It seems to me, and I'm telling you this from my own experience, it seems to me that as long as you keep your wellness as a second tier priority, so that once the ambitions are met, then we'll get around to wellness, you are just set up your whole life as it unfolds on a moment by moment, on a day by day, a week by week, a year by year, a decade by decade basis. You're set up for strife and struggling and toil and work. But if you were to decide to make your sense of wellness, to drop your conditions over your wellness so that wellness is allowed right now, so that there are no more ambitions, so that you are just allowed to exist as you are right now, it's no guarantee that you're ever going to get what you originally wanted. What if you don't? You may not. So that's the essential question right now. That's where I find myself at too. That's why I'm talking about this. And I think just as I'm talking about this, I think I'm ready to choose wellness. I wonder if you are too. I wonder what would happen if we were to drop and really make up our minds right now, even if we don't even necessarily know how and we don't know what else is involved. The how-to might still be a mystery. But what if you and I were to make up our minds right now that wellness, peace, satisfaction, harmony were to be our topmost value without any conditions, I wonder what would happen. I wonder how well we would be. Probably really well. And who knows, maybe from that state of wellness, maybe some nice stuff will come as a result of it. It's worth experimenting with anyways. So this went a little bit longer than I expected. But thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And may you be so well. All right, bye.